Major General John B. Medaris is the commander of the 5,000-man Army team that shot the satellite Explorer into space 2 weeks ago tonight. When he took over the Army's ballistic missile agency at Huntsville, Alabama, the general could look back on a number of careers in his 55 years. As a boy in Springfield, Ohio, he worked as a gas lamplighter, a newsboy, a taxi driver, trolley operator, and railroad hand. He studied mechanical engineering at Ohio State University. He served with the Marines in the First World War, spent some time in the Army, resigned, did 10 years in merchandising and management, returned to the Army, and in World War II he was responsible for the ordnance phase of the invasion of Normandy. 2 years ago he was assigned to Huntsville and to history. General and Mrs. Medaris, by the way, they met when he kibitzed her at a bridge game in Cincinnati, they now live in this modern ranch-style house in Redstone Arsenal, 5 miles from the town of Huntsville. They have lived in this quarters number 1 for just a year. Good evening, Mrs. Medaris.
Evening, Gary.
Good evening, General.
Good evening, Gary, and welcome to our home.
Thank you, sir. Well, General, since Jupiter C went into orbit 2 weeks ago, you have said that the next major war will be fought out of this world. And you think we can someday send a man to the moon and bring him back, and you feel our goal should be the, quote, domination of space. Is that true?
Yes, that's right. Of course, I don't believe we're going to do it tomorrow, but it'll be very soon, I think, and I think all these things will happen.
Well, Mrs. Medaris, what do you think of all this, the present and the future?
Well, to me, it's all a little bit weird, and I don't know very much about it except what I read in the newspapers.
The general is close-mouthed, is he?
How's that again?
I say the general is a little close-mouthed about his problems at home.
A little bit, yes.
Well, General, could you tell us just where our Explorer is right at this moment?
Yes, I think I can show you, Gary.
Oh, great.
We're kind of interested, you know, and we keep this around.
Well, I think all of us are tremendously interested.
And here's a spread map of the world.
Yes.
And then we have a little overlay here that, in accordance with the time, we can put in the right position over the top of it with the line on the equator. And then right now, let me see, right now we would be a half hour before the node. That means that it's right in the South Atlantic on the way towards the southern part of Africa.
Well, that's certainly a long way from the nights when you were working your way through high school driving a taxi, isn't it?
It surely is, Gary. It's more than that. I think in my lifetime I have had the privilege of seeing the greatest advances and changes that have ever taken place in any similar time in recorded history. It's a long way from lamplight to satellite.
And I imagine that the coming years will accelerate even more than the past few ones.
I think that's true.
Well, General, there is one recent chapter of history that you participated in, the moment at Cape Canaveral when Jupiter C was shot into space. Could you tell us what it was like, what you saw and what you heard, and above all, what you felt?
That's no trouble at all, Gary, because I'll never forget it. The last 10 minutes particularly. Before that, it's largely a matter of the systematic countdown that we've been through many times. But in the last 10 minutes of this particular operation, you could feel tension rise in the blockhouse. You could just feel it. You couldn't hear it. Nobody appeared to be nervous, but the tension just rose and you could feel it. And then as it got down to the last seconds, and you hoped nothing would happen, everything was going to go right, and then finally firing command and main stage, and here comes this big burst of fire, and the rocket starts to rise, and everybody in that blockhouse said, "Go, baby, go." You could just feel it. And everything was just going fine. About 110 seconds, a little less than 2 minutes, and all of a sudden that velocity chart started to waver. And the pin went off to the left towards zero and wavered back a little, then back off to the left again. And I think every heart in that room stopped. There wasn't a sound. There was just a deathly quiet, and we waited. Because this was a signal that could mean that it had failed. But in not too many seconds, a message came over the telephone that it was still coming in properly at another receiving point, that they still had it. And we knew it was all right. And then all of a sudden, after a few minutes, that all-important signal lamp lit, second stage ignition. And then we knew it was all right, but we had to wait to see whether it was in the right direction and had really gotten in orbit. That wait was tough, too.
Well, Mrs. Medaris, do you remember what you were doing at about the time Explorer went out into space?
Oh, yes. I was next door at General Barclay's quarters at a party. General Barclay is General Medaris' deputy. And all of a sudden, all of the men disappeared. They told us to turn the radio on and the TV. And we finally got the news, and there was an awfully happy bunch of people, believe me.
I'll bet you. General, as a result of this, and I'm sure you've experienced this, you yourself and to some degree your private life have now become, you belong to the world. I suppose you must have received congratulations from all over the free world.
We've had thousands. I've been glad to accept them on the behalf of the team. I have a few here, however, that I think are especially interesting, Gary, and I'd like to show you a couple of them.
We'd like very much to see them. Where are you taking us, sir, now?
Taking you down to the study where I have my little alcove here that I use for work at home when I need to and for reading and keep some things that are precious to me.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a small file that has a few of these letters in them, and I'd just like to read you a couple of them that are especially interesting, I think. This one says, "The last time I felt the elation and the thrill and the new lease on life is when my wife had her first baby. Your success with the satellite has brought to us the elation of the birth of a newborn. God bless you." That's one kind.
Oh, that's very nice.
And here's one that came in that I think is especially interesting. This is from the 3rd grade at Smith's Lane School at Comac, Long Island, New York. And I'll just read part of it to you, and I think maybe you can see part of it, too. They talk about being short of buses for field trips and for school. And then it says, "The way it looks to us, you will be reaching the moon long before our buses are ready. Now, this could be a real good field trip. If you have any spare room, we would like to be the first 3rd grade class to go into orbit. There are 34 in our class, and some of the girls are scared, so all of us won't go. Will we eat regular food or pellets? Do we need lead shoes? Do you have a bathroom? Will you write us an absence excuse? Can we send messages home? Do you think the magnetic field of the moon can pull us in?" And a lot more. This is going to be a real difficult one to answer, but we'll try real hard.
I was going to say, you have a career ahead of you in just answering that one. Now, down in the corner of the picture, sir, I see what appears to be the Jupiter C beside you. Is that it? We can't see all of it from here.
This is a model of the Jupiter C. Yes, Gary.
Ah.
There it is. And here are the upper stages, and there is the little satellite. This is a scale model. Of course, I have a better model here of the satellite to a slightly larger scale. This is the same thing, and this is the part that is in orbit. This upper half here is the part that has the instrumentation, and this is really the satellite itself. The lower part is the burnt-out, empty rocket of the last stage, but this is what is in orbit.
Well, now, you say working very hard. That, of course, is inherent in the project. As a result of this tremendous load, do you get to spend much time with your family these days?
No, certainly not nearly as much as I'd like to. We're very fortunate tonight that we have a couple of them here with us who came over to look at the TV here.
Uh-huh.
Of course, then we have a boy that's 21, and he's in his 3rd year at the military academy right now. And there's an older girl who's married to an Episcopalian minister in Shelbyville, Indiana. She had 3 boys, grandsons, and she just came up with twins. Boy and a girl.
How very nice for all concerned.
Hi, kids.
All right, General.
How you doing? You like it?
Oh, it's
Fine,
grand.
so.
Gary, this is Marta, my daughter.
Good evening, Marta.
Hello, Gary.
And this is my son-in-law, Captain Woody, Chuck.
How are you, Captain? Very nice to see you.
Very glad to meet you, Gary.
Marta, you must be very proud of your dad.
I've been proud of him all my life, Gary.
Good. As well you should be. I would like to ask one question of you, General. This is a question that a lot of people are wondering, I am sure, and it is this, that in all of this business of mucking about in space, do you ever wonder whether or not you might be violating some law of God?
Oh, no, I don't think so, Gary. Just a minute. Let me sit down and answer that one. You go and look at the television. Mother, you want to sit over in the more comfortable chair there?
That was a
Because
question
this
to
one
which
may take-
I'm,
this one may take a little answering.
I'm sure it must.
But I really don't think so, Gary. I believe really that if we had been violating any real religious precept, any law of God, that the door would have been slammed shut in our face long ago. I think he's made it possible for us to learn these new things, and now I think the challenge is on us to know how to use them. And if we don't meet that challenge, then we will really be in trouble. But if we meet the challenge and know how to use these instruments instead of having them use us, if we can master them, and if we can, in the tradition of the United States and our people, if we can use them for the good of mankind, I think the whole business opens up a tremendous possibility for future peace, for greater progress in the fulfillment of God's will.
Well, that is certainly a fine answer. General Medaris, Mrs. Medaris, it has been a great joy, a great pleasure. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to visit with all of our friends on Person to Person. Thank you very much, and good night.
Good night, Gary.
Good night.
Good night, Ms. Medaris.